Dear Void, Job, or Iyov as he is known in Hebrew, is probably the one book in the Bible that got people the most upset and confused than all other books. But I don't think it needs to be. It presents a philosophical perspective that would not be acceptable by everyone. That's fine. That's part of the world of philosophy. But I think we can agree that it is a fascinating perspective and an interesting way of dealing with the question of good and evil in the world. Because the main question that Job is trying to answer is, why is there no fairness in the world? Why some good people suffer and bad people win? Now, before going further, we need to clarify two things. One, I'm not talking about this from a perspective of a believer. I'm not saying this is how it is. I'm just giving you the philosophy and theology from a purely academic philosophical perspective. I'm saying this is what the philosophy is. Whether you accept it or not, completely up to you. Second, we need to distinguish again between the way Christians read the story and the way Jews do, because Christians took it to mean something completely different. Christians read the Bible literally. They believe they have to accept everything in the Bible as something that actually happened. So here comes this story where God is talking to Satan, and God is proud of Job and how righteous he is. And Satan goes, that's just because you gave him so much wealth and a lovely wife and children and friends. If you take that away from him, he won't be so righteous for long. So God goes into a wager with Satan and slowly takes everything away from Job. His wife, his kids, his livelihood. And he still remains loyal to God. And even when his friends tell him, can't you see what this God of yours is doing to you? He insists on remaining faithful. In the end, God reveals himself and Job demands to know why he had to suffer. And on the surface, God's answer is very unsatisfying. He basically tells Job, you wouldn't understand. But then God gives Job all that he has lost back again, and that's how the story ends. Now, Christians struggled with the story too. While they did adopt the God works in mysterious ways trope, they needed more to justify Job's suffering. And the way they reconciled it was by making it about redemption through suffering, a pivotal theme in Christianity. Jesus himself, of course, has to suffer horribly and die for humanity's sins, and then he goes to hell for 3 days before coming back to life and ascending to heaven. Job is seen as a precursor of that. In Christianity, you suffer in this life in order to be rewarded in the next. But Jewish theology is very different to Christian theology, as I already explored in this video of mine, link in the description. One of the main differences is that Judaism does not read the Bible literally. In Judaism, the Bible is read in layers and layers, and every verse has multiple meanings. In Judaism, the Torah is not just the first 5 books of the Hebrew Bible. It is an entire library of hundreds of other volumes interpreting those books on different levels. Another thing that is different is that in Judaism, angels are not conscious beings. They are the representation of God's will. They do not have free will of their own. So God can't really talk to Satan as if he is talking to a completely independent creature. So the way Judaism understood the story is that it is a legend, a metaphor, from beginning to end. Job is a philosophical piece meant to try and understand the principle of unfairness in the world. And it does so from the perspective of God's own mind. God is talking to himself. He imagines this perfect righteous human, and he asks himself, would such a human still be righteous if I take everything from him? God is contemplating the very nature of humanity. And he comes to 2 conclusions. That humans, by the very way we are wired, are self-centered and assume all we can grasp is all there is, and that humans may still be loyal or righteous even if they don't understand everything and cannot perceive the big picture. So God is imagining all of this. He imagines Job's arguments with his friends, and then he imagines his own conversation with this fictional righteous human. And God's answer is far more complex than I work in mysterious ways. God is trying to convey something very basic that we know today to be true. A biological brain has limitations. Think of your dog. He may be the smartest dog in the world, Maybe he knows how to open doors or fetch things that you want. Maybe he was trained to calm you down when you are upset or to alert you when you are about to have a seizure. Yeah, some dogs are trained to do that. But no matter how smart your dog is, you cannot discuss art with him. Art is simply not a concept a dog's brain can comprehend. It has nothing to do with learning. It's about the hardwired capacity of the brain. It's basically like trying to install Windows 95 on a Commodore 64. It simply cannot be done. The hardware just can't sustain the software. It can't understand it, it can't work with it. So your dog walks in a world where there are concepts he will never even know exist because he can't comprehend them, and you need to be able to comprehend something before you realize it exists. Now, humans are too biological creatures with a biological brain, and as such, we are also limited. We're not as limited as a dog, but we are limited. There are concepts out there that we will never comprehend, that we don't even have the tools to recognize their existence. And that is a concept that most humans find very difficult to accept, especially these days in the age of science. For me personally, that is the answer to the Fermi paradox. The paradox asks if, statistically speaking, the existence of other intelligent life forms in the universe is assured, and it is, because we are just one planet out of a billion in one galaxy out of a billion galaxies. So, statistically speaking, the idea that only we exist as intelligent creatures is extremely unlikely. So, where is everyone? How come we don't see ships zooming through space when we look through our telescopes? Well, if a different civilization to us has managed to travel the vastness of space in a practical manner, they are probably using technologies we cannot even dream about, let alone detect with our limited human light speed based technologies and understanding of the cosmos. They might be all around us right now and we wouldn't even know it. And to them, we're not even a curiosity, any more than a grain of sand is a curiosity to us. So God's answer to Job is that, first of all, even if I wanted to explain to you that my reasoning, it's impossible. The same as we will try to explain Picasso or Beethoven to a dog. You simply do not have the capacity to understand the answer. Now you might say, but that's not true because we know the reason. He was betting on it with Satan. But you forget, that is a metaphor. That is a way of bringing down God's train of thought to a level that humans can understand. It's not really how it went down. In fact, according to Maimonides and other Jewish scholars and philosophers, every time God is described in human terms, it is just the closest thing to the truth that the human brain can comprehend. God is never really happy or sad or angry or calm like we humans experience those emotions. These are metaphors, words used to convey God in a way that the human brain may understand. And so is the conversation he has with Satan. The real thought process behind this divine musing is something we can't communicate in any human language and can never hope to understand. And that is what God is saying to Job. And humanity's inability to understand goes farther than that, because what do we actually mean when we say good or bad and evil and unfair? How do we solve it ourselves? In a way, we try to do that in the modern age. That's Nietzsche's God is dead declaration. When he said that, he didn't mean the actual God is dead. He meant that as humanity matured and started to embrace secular ideas, it has grown past the need of God as a father figure to fix the world for us. God is dead in the sense that we don't need him anymore to tell us how to live and what to do. We can figure it out ourselves, according to Nietzsche. Well, we've tried throughout the modern age, from the 18th century to our current years. How did we do? Are people happier or more miserable? I think the consensus would be that, at the very least, we haven't made much progress. And that is because it is an unfixable problem, at least for our brains. Because the very definition of good is different for each of us. I can think of a world that I would consider a utopia, and to others it would be very much a hell. We can't fix the nature of reality, and the nature of reality is based on movement. The only things that are in total rest are the things that do not exist. Everything that is moving by definition. And movement is change. And change, by definition, means that things will go from up to down, from down to up, from good to bad, from bad to good, and so on. There has to be some kind of an opposite of the state you're in right now in order to have movement. So the existence of evil, of negativity in the world, is built into the very fabric of reality. We cannot change that. We can't even imagine a world where it is changed. But it goes beyond that, because God says that the very question is very human-centric. The story of Job actually rebels against the very idea that creation was done for humanity. And this idea exists both in Judaism and in Christianity. It seems to be the conclusion of the creation myth we find in Genesis, because God creates everything before humans. So humans seem to be the very thing that God is aiming for. But that is a false interpretation of the story. And perhaps I'll get into it in a different video. The point is, in the story of Job, God basically says, you are not the point of everything. He accuses humanity of seeing creation from a very self-centered and limited position. But from his position, there's an entire system, an incomprehensible array of particles and forces and creatures and principles, all of those things, from the smallest atom to the most divine musical piece, from the fart of an insect to the sunset as viewed from the top of a mountain, from the mysteries of black holes to the complex mechanisms of a single biological cell. Mechanisms we still haven't cracked completely, even with all the progress we've made. And in God's view, all of those things exist together, in all levels, in all layers, and they all work together, and they are all just as important. It's not about humanity, and it's definitely not about this or that person. And here we get to one of the hardest concepts to grasp in Judaism. And yes, it is a controversial concept even within Judaism, but a concept which Maimonides and others have written about in length. Belief for the sake of belief. Emunah lishma in Hebrew. In Judaism, the highest form of faith is the faith that doesn't expect anything in return. The faith that is kept because of the personal convictions of the person that that is the right thing to do. And that is what Job is. He is a metaphor for that. You are not supposed to keep God's laws because you want your life to be good or you want your afterlife to be good. You are supposed to keep God's laws because you understand that that is your place in the world. That is what you exist for. That is the right thing to do, whether your life is good or bad. Now, Jewish philosophers do recognize that this is not an easy level of faith to achieve. It's basically what the story of Abraham and Isaac is trying to convey, another story that has been misinterpreted throughout the ages. So according to Maimonides, for example, the belief of some kind of a payment for good service, if you will, is not in itself evil, because it might put people on the right path. But it is important to remember that that is not the point. Even prayer is not supposed to be about the person praying. In Judaism, all prayers are prayers of thanks. You thank God for what you have, regardless of anything. You bless God, again, regardless of anything. And you ask for God's blessing. But you are not supposed to pray in order to make things happen. When people say, I prayed and God listened, they actually corrupt the original point of the prayer, as well as the faith in God itself. Because then they turn God into a tool. And in fact, they aggrandize themselves. They are the ones wielding the tool. If they haven't prayed, it wouldn't have happened. And if they actually believe that, who has the power then? God or them? So, in conclusion, the point of the story of Job is really 4 points. 1, humans are limited in their ability to comprehend the reasons for pain and suffering in the world. 2, pain and suffering are part of the fabric of reality. Why? We don't know. We might as well ask why there are negative and positive charges. It's just the way reality is. God, if he exists, he knows why, but we will never understand it. 3. The very question is human-centric and corrupts from the point of human existence, which is to get out of our own heads and our own needs and put something greater than us at the center of our existence. And 4. Humans can get to that level of righteousness, that level of selfless faith that completely puts themselves outside of their own heads. At least that is what the story claims. Whether it's really possible or not, well, the jury is still out on that, at least in my opinion.